tell you why this is a bad about you. Whenever I get to see my I am not the same. You ask me what I've seen, I'll tell you a little everything. You ask me what I've seen, I'll tell you a little everything.
So hey guys, welcome to the episode with Matthew Rodriguez. It's funny, man, because you're a musician, but this is the first time that me and you have actually met face to face, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think you're here? Tell me why you're here.
Well, I was here because I was playing music on the pier, something I love doing.
Yeah.
For those that don't know,
What pier?
Newport Beach Pier.
Okay.
So for those that don't know, the term busking means playing music. And Joe over here behind the camera actually saw me playing, and he set up a really professional rig. I've had people with DSLRs kind of film me sometimes before, but he had a tripod, he had the microphone, he had all this professional gear. I'm like, oh, I got to put my A game on, right?
Yeah.
So I start playing, and I was really feeling the music that night, anyways. You know, some nights are better than others. And he was getting all this footage of me, and then he came to me and said, hey, let me connect with you. I got a podcast I might want to have you on, and honestly, I was really hoping something like that might happen eventually.
Yeah.
I've connected with other musicians before, and I've had a lot of times where I'm playing on the pier where people who are either Instagram influencers, social media influencers, or just generally really good musicians who I connect with. And I don't think I'll ever stop playing music out on the street for that reason. I've met so many more people playing on the street than I have just in general. Like, I'll go to shows all the time, but you meet some people there, but when you're playing on the street, there's thousands of people passing you per hour. And that's so many more opportunities for you as a musician, as an artist, to kind of get more exposure and I'll have my social media taped to the side of my amp, and I get so many followers way more that way than even running ads on Instagram.
Absolutely.
So it's like, why do that when I can get myself out there? And I think that's why I'm here today, is because I was hustling.
Yeah.
I was in for the kill.
Yeah. No, that's what they say. The more hands you shake, the more money you'll make.
That's a good one. Haven't heard that.
Well, because when you talk about doing ads on like Instagram and social media, they're good from an exposure point, but you're targeting a lot of people who you've never really seen face to face, and there's something to say about that face to face interaction with people. I feel that really whenever it comes to sales, I can close anyone whenever they are in front of me. And so depending on like, if you're talking to someone on the phone, you can't see that person's expression. You can't really tell who they are. And it's so much easier to really just tear them down at that moment, right? So especially with music, you're just like, that guy this and that guy that. But when you're there and you see it and you feel that emotion, and that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about is like, you said you've been playing for how long?
15 years.
For 15 years, wow.
So April 19th, 2004.
How old are you?
I'm 31.
Okay.
So I started singing when I was in middle school. I used to sing in the choir.
Okay.
In Christian school, I was a little choir boy.
Yeah.
Right, but I was the number one choir boy. In fact, one of my teacher, she's like, you know what? We were using the piano for, pitch reference.
Yeah.
But when she realized that I had perfect pitch, she's like, all right, we're going to use Matthew for pitch reference.
Okay.
So I would sing the A, all right? And then da-da-da-da. And we ended up winning a competition in Lancaster as kids. I mean, that school was crazy. Mm-hmm. Most of the classes were just, all right, we're not doing history class today. We're doing music again.
Yeah. Wow.
And the kids who didn't make it in music, they were kicked back to history class. It's a very small school.
Yeah, you were in Lancaster, California?
For a competition, yeah.
Oh,
they used to do competitions out there. I don't know if it was just kind of Bible schools.
Yeah.
Remember they had Bible competitions, like to see who knew the most knowledge about the Bible. Didn't join that, but I did love the music stuff. And so I've been singing since I was in middle school. So even know how long that would be since I was 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And guitar since I was about 16, right before my 17th birthday. Again, April 19th, 2004.
Yeah.
June 28th is my birthday, so it was like and then my 17th birthday, I walked into my room and there's an electric guitar in there. And with a little terrible amp, but I loved it, man. It's like right then and there I fell in love with the guitar.
So because I mean, you've been playing for a long time, but when did you stop playing and when did you start actually feeling the music? When did you connect with it?
When I stopped playing covers.
Oh, okay.
So that was about, I'd say 3 years in. I think I was about 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote my first poem, and I'm like, well, why am I going to separate poetry and music? I can do both.
Yeah.
And I really got to start singing again. I had stopped singing when I started playing guitar. I don't know why, really. I did kind of sing sometimes for covers, but once I stopped playing covers and started trying to write my own music, that's when I really fell in love with the instrument. It started making a lot more sense to me to try to create something that I felt rather than try to reproduce something that somebody else had felt.
Yeah. What do you remember, like, what that song was that you wrote the first time?
Yeah, it was called Living Simply. And it was basically about how I was living at the time, which was very simply, and it wasn't by choice. Mm-hmm. It was by necessity, because I wasn't very well off. Yeah. And neither was my family. So I had to live very, very simply. Yeah. And whether that meant buying the generic toilet paper or buying generic strings for my guitar, it was always a matter of how much can I reduce my use.
Dude, that's rough, because it's like you kind of hit on two things, and I'm sure your brain kind of went there, but one of the things is like necessity, which you really don't care about. You know, you're like, oh man, branding cornflakes, like it hurts, you know. But seeing as you like love the guitar, you're like, man, I wish I had the best strings, even if it, you know. And that's what hurts, is you're like, man, like I just, you know, I'll put everything else on the side, but I wish I could just buy this thing. You know what I mean? And I'm sorry, you took me to a place that, you know, I could actually see you buying the strings and being like, fuck, man.
Yeah, dude.
You know?
I was getting the worst strings imaginable. I mean, I remember one time I was putting a set of strings on, and on the first chord strum, I'm not even lying to you, the G string broke. It went down, and I'm like, I just spent like $5 on these, dude, and I drove all the way there. It was, I know it's funny.
No, that's a joke in itself. I'm sorry.
The G string broke. It snapped. That's always a joke with my guitar students too, because I give guitar lessons, and when I tell the younger, like whether it's 12, 13-year-old boy, and I'm like, yeah, okay, so here's the G string. They're like, G string. But when that snapped, dude, I realized, I'm like, I don't have another string to replace that. And I remember playing for weeks with 5 strings. Wow. And that's an important string. If you're a guitar player, you know that creates your major thirds, your minor thirds. What makes chords sad and happy is that one string. So it was a time where I realized, you know what, it was the kind of the thing that pushed me, honestly. That one string breakage made me realize I can't be messing around with these minimum wage jobs. Like I gotta increase my income if I want to, you know, do this. And now I teach guitar for like $50 an hour, but I don't have a lot of clients, so I'm still not as well off as I want to be. But I'm using a lot less time to make a lot more money, and because of that, now I do have the best strings in the world on there. I got elixirs on there.
Yeah, out of need is what really pushes you. I share this story with some people, but I don't think anybody's ever really heard it. But when me and my wife were actually trying to move out of living with, I think we were living with my mom at the time. And in California, you know, if you want a single place or apartment to yourself, it's $1,600 to $1,700 a month, you know? So we were looking for like roommates, and we did like Craigslist, and we did a bunch of other places. And eventually we got to the point where we met such bad, unreliable people that I was just so frustrated knowing that my wife was next to me, and I was like, dude, whatever, like I'll figure it out. Let's just go move in. And it's so true that like out of necessity, that's what pushes you forward. You know, that string breaking on you, it's like, geez, I wish somebody would give me the money to really, you know, buy this string. But then you buy it with that money. It's like, what did that teach you? You know, but it's like knowing just that nobody's there to really like come and rescue you. That does miracles for like people.
Yeah, so. It really did. It did a lot of miracles for me, because when that happened, I don't think there's ever been a time since that string breakage that I haven't hustled every single hour of every single day. I'm hustling now. I remember I had an eBay business selling iPods. I was making like $1,000 to $2,000 a month. I started guitar lessons, and originally I started giving guitar lessons at age 19. So I've been giving guitar lessons for about 12 years now. Yeah. And I started for $20 an hour.
Yeah. Well, how fun was that? I'm sure people didn't want to really get.
Oh, they didn't take me seriously.
Yeah.
You know, somebody who's charging $20 an hour. Even one of the kids told me my first guitar lesson. The 6-year-old kid, he's like, "Why are you so cheap?" And the mom was like, "Shh." Right? And I'm like, am I cheap? You know? And I didn't realize, but yeah, I wasn't qualified to be giving lessons at that time. I did it out of necessity.
Yeah.
And my first job was working at a factory, which was terrible. I remember I got some chemical in my eye.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really play guitar or focus on anything for a long period of time because my eye was burning.
Yeah.
You know? But it was kind of a decision I had to make where if I want to enjoy my life, I have to find a way to make money and enjoy my life, which teaching guitar lessons, that was kind of the answer for that.
Yeah. Who do you write your songs for? Like, what is it for yourself? Is it for a certain person? I mean, when I look at my podcast, right, For the Kill, I know who my target audience is, and it's those people that really have been doing, you know, like what we talk about, which is, you know, the grind, and they see the goal and then they go after the goal, or the people that want to be doing that, right? So for you, who do you write those songs for?
I write it for people like me, the people who have overcome. Like, I used to be very depressed and had low self-esteem. I used to walk with kind of a hunch over. In high school, I was constantly looking down at the ground. And this instrument gave me the confidence to be myself and have confidence in that person. And I always say, and I tell everybody this, that confidence comes from competence. So when I became competent at the instrument, I became competent as a human being in my mind, because that's the one thing I wanted was I wanted to be Jimi Hendrix. I wanted to be Kurt Cobain and write a song that was really different and unique and kind of would change the world. So who I'm writing for really is the people that were like me, that kind of hunch over. Maybe they're like that now. So all my lyrics are based on life experiences where I was in the worst part of my life when I wrote some of my best songs. And I think that's the same for a lot of artists. So I don't erase those songs because they're painful to play. I play them and I sing them loudly because I want the people who are struggling like me to understand that if you want to be confident, get some competence, and the confidence will come with time. And you got to lift a load. You got to work hard in order for that depression to really go away. I think it's the only solution. I don't believe in pills or any of that stuff. I believe in hard work. And when you get the fruits of your labor, the depression just magically disappears. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's one of the best pieces of advice we've probably gotten, like, in all the episodes we've done so far. I had somebody tell me the same thing, and it was regarding a product, and said, "Do you know why you're not confident in the product?" And I was like, "Because it doesn't work." And he's like, no, the reason that you don't have confidence is because you don't know it. And I had to take like a good reflection. I was like, you know what? He's absolutely right, because I thought it didn't work, but did I really know how it worked and how many things that I could get out of it, and like why, you know, what the longevity of it is. And when I started really looking inwardly, it made so much sense. Like, the more you know about something, the more confident you can be. So it is out of competence. If you don't know a guitar, how can you say, I'm a great guitar player, you know? Oh, I hope that they don't ask me to play that string because, God, I suck with that string. You know, you'll never be confident in that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, you've been doing this for so long, and I know, I mean, just me and Joseph were talking about it. We really, really enjoy your music. We think you're really good at it.
Thank you, man. That means a lot.
So we know that your time is coming, but it hasn't come yet. So what keeps you going when right now you're not seeing the results, right? You're not seeing the results you want. What is keeping you going in this moment?
That's such a good question, man, because I've been struggling lately with YouTube. Like, I'm happy to get 100 views on a song on YouTube, and I've been because it takes me 6 or 8 hours to produce a song on YouTube. Like, I'll go into Pro Tools, I'll remaster the audio, I'll increase the video quality, I'll do all this stuff production-wise in my home studio, and I'm getting 100 views, you know, and I'll go on the pier sometimes, I'll play for 3 hours and make $3. You know, it's not always the $20, $50 an hour average. Sometimes it's way below that. I remember I auditioned for American Idol, I auditioned for America's Got Talent, got rejected both times, and what keeps me going are people like you guys that appreciate it, that understand what I'm doing. What keeps me going is the people that leave a comment on YouTube that say, you know what, this got me through. You know, I've been going through some rough times, but what you were singing about, that got me through. Yeah. And sometimes people will message me on Instagram saying that. Or one time there was a kid on the pier who was singing my song. He was like, hey, sing that song I was here last time. I said, last time, sing that song, man, I want to hear that one. And I'm like, what, you remember that song? And he's like, yeah, I love it. My mom loves it too. So people like that keeps me going, because I know that all I have to do is increase that following.
Yeah.
And once that increases, I mean, I'm there.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of time.
So I try not to, because it comes up a lot in what the conversations are. But Grant Cardone, he was a huge influence in me, and there was one thing that he said when it comes to change, and I think that what you have right now is you're trying to change from where you were really put into the circumstances you were born into and into what you want to be, right? And he says if you want to change, there's two things you have to do. You have to change, which is obvious. People know that, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I want to go to the gym. You go to the gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he says if you want that change to last, if you don't want it to be just another month, you need an audience.
That's a good point.
And it's true, because everything that I've done, once I start telling people about it, and I'll be loud about it now, you know what I mean? If I say, hey, I have no plans of doing this, but I'm going to Mexico next month in April, and I tell 1,000 people, and I don't go, oh my God, am I going to hear it? You know?
Yes.
And that's the reality of it, is the more people you tell, the more audience that you have, the more likely that you're going to keep going. And that's why with all these people, it comes back to you respecting that you have those people that need you, that want you, that you're giving something to them, you're giving back to them, right? And even with that kid, he was like, I remember you. So how powerful is that somebody like not only likes your stuff, but actually knows enough to remember you, to think about you. So even like if people were to find out, oh, this guy's gone, it's like, man, I really like that guy's music. You already have somebody who's like, you're in their memory.
Yeah, that was really powerful for me. And I think what you were saying about, having an audience, it was true of me for getting sober. I smoked weed from age 17 until just this year. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't, I would have breaks, for 6 months, for 3 months. But if I'm honest with myself, those breaks were never really real. I never really intended to quit for the remainder of my life. Yeah. And even when I quit this time, I'm like, well, I'll start smoking again when I get a house. But recently I said, you know what? I don't ever need to again. Mm-hmm. And the reason being is a large part and because I had an audience. I told my father, I told my sister, and my sister couldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. She's always known me as the stoner guy. Yeah. I told my girlfriend, I didn't tell my audience on YouTube because I think it's a little too personal, but I told every single person that was important in my life. Yes. And that really helped me keep going because I didn't want to let them down either. Yeah. And so now that I'm not letting them down, I'm not letting myself down, I'm a much better person for it. But that's a really good point, that you need to have an audience if you want something to stick. Because otherwise your accountability is just to yourself, and sometimes we're really good at lying to ourselves. I
don't think you even believe it when you say, if I say like, hey, I'm going to go to Mexico, and it's like, it's been 3 years since I've been saying it. It's like, nobody knows. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a liar. I just said it to myself. But once you start telling people, you're like, I'm going to be known as a liar. And that label, I think, like, I think even people who are liars don't want to be considered liars, because it's such a negative thing. That when you do have that audience, it's like, oh man, they're gonna think I'm a liar, and it's like, oh, the L word, like.
Yeah, it's a big stigma, and what you were saying about, that kid too. It's like when I have fans that are that young, because I don't curse in my music, and the reason I don't curse in my music, I feel it kind of cheapens it. Mm-hmm. Just my own personal preference. When I have fans that young, I don't want to let them down. I don't want them to go to a concert because I know I'm going to be famous. I know I'm going to make it. Yeah. It's not something that I'm not even trying to self-actualize or anything. Like I just know it's coming. And when I get to that point, I don't want that kid to know that his hero smokes. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be that as an example. I want every one of my younger fans to be like how I would treat my son or my daughter. I want them to have somebody to look up to that is actually pure from the inside out, whether that's spiritually or physically or emotionally, because I've conquered that depression through that hard work that I was talking about. And I can't do that if I'm not, truly being the best me that I can be. Yeah. And if I'm honest, and I'm not judging anybody out there that smokes, but if I'm honest, I wasn't the best me when I was doing that. And now that I don't, I'm writing more music, I'm writing better music. My voice is so much better. Mm-hmm. It's from even my speaking voice is better. It's more clear, more concise. I can think much quicker. Everything has improved. And I think that it's not just the quitting that's improved. It's not just the quitting that's improved my life, I should say, but just the idea of wanting to be a better person.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that it's not even about offending anyone. It's just, your core value, your foundation. And when you find that foundation, when you know who you are, you can really become the person that you're meant to be, right? And the thing is like, if people smoke, there might be people that are like, dude, I got too much, like, I'm high octane all the time, I gotta bring it down. It's like, dude, maybe you do need to bring it down, you know, like, you really do need to take it down a few steps. But sometimes it's like you said, that wasn't really maybe the real you. It was the struggle, and you're just like, man, maybe I'm not just mature enough to handle the struggle, you know?
Yeah, I don't think I was. If I'm honest, I think that with my home life and my family life being what it was always a struggle for me mentally to cope with the idea that I didn't have the same leg up that everybody else I knew had. Because I went to a private school. Everybody I knew was rich, had, you know, drove nice cars. They had everything. You know, they're all, I look on Facebook now, they're all, you know, dentists, they're doctors. I didn't have all that money. I didn't have all that. I didn't have that leg up. Yeah. So when I was younger, my confidence was down. But you know what I do have? I have a talent that all of them are liking on Instagram. I have a passion that all of them wish that they had. I have a career that is internally satisfying. When I get to go to a kid's house and see his smile on his face when he learns a new concept or a chord or a scale that he's just excited about, that is so much more rewarding than I know that any of their careers. Yeah. So I'm not jealous anymore at all. But in my youth, yeah, it was a struggle. Yeah.
No, there's two things that come to mind when you say those things. And the first one is, there's a guy that would say, oh God, why me? Why me, God? Why me, right? And he goes, well, who else would you prefer, right? He's like are you preferring it to the guy down the street? Or are you preferring it, you know, to your parents? Like, who else but you, right? Like, that's what you were giving. You can't go and say transfer it to somebody else, right? So why complain? And the second thing is like, hey, if you haven't heard this guy, like, look him up, but his name is Eric Thomas. And he says you may have been born into privilege, you may have had like a dad, they may have bought you a car, but you will not outwork me. And that's one thing, that it doesn't matter how much money you have, that it resides in you. So it's like, you may have $10 million, but if I work harder than you, eventually it's going to level out.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what my band name is about. And my band name is Pyriscent. It's Pyriscent. So a Pyriscent seed is like a pine cone seed. It requires fire in order to sprout.
Wow. And
that's the meaning of essentially my whole life, is because of the hardship that I've had to go through. By the time my business is established, and whether that's, you know, through I'm hoping it's through music, or whether it's through sound design or social media, by the time it's established, it'll be so much more, and I'll have so much more strength than anybody who had something handed to them. So if anybody's going through something, I just want you guys to know, you know, that strength needs to be fostered into competence, and it has to be, you have to work hard. Otherwise, all the strength that you've attained through all of that is going to go to waste. And I didn't let it go to waste. I've put it into something, and now I have my own business. Yeah. So it's important to remember that through the fire, new seeds can be forged if you water them.
Absolutely. So, dude, no, that's great advice. As you know, we have a lot of different types of people on this show. I really try to be as diverse as I can, but I think that you're really in that time frame of when people are discovering themselves, and it's always so difficult. I mean, I experienced it in my early 20s, but it's so difficult trying to really find the right person, or hear the right person and have them say like, yeah, your life sucks, just keep going. You know, that's the reality. It's like, dude, just keep going, and what you're becoming is going to be what you need.
Yeah, people who always, you know, sit in their own wallowing, you know, whether it's self-deprecation or their own depression, it's kind of like just this wet puddle, you know, and if you don't move, to you, your world is always wet and dark. You know, if you don't move out of that cave, which some days can be a cave, but you can choose to walk out into the sunlight, or you can choose to sit in the cave for the rest of your life. Yeah. And I think that is what ends up and ultimately being suicide, is your whole life is dark because of lack of movement, because of lack of, like I said, lifting that load, I think, is the best. And when you lift that load, you're forced to move. And when you're forced to move, your surroundings change. Yeah. And thus, your perspective change. I always use the example of a mountain. One side is dark and steep, and the other side is covered in light and it's very shallow. It's the same mountain, but your perspective will determine what it is that you climb. Yeah. So it's really up to you in your own mind, I think.
when I was young, what helped me is that I was stuck in a job that I didn't like. I was making what appeared to be good money because I was making more than everybody else there, and the hours were good for my industry. The benefits were good and everything, but I kept wanting to find another job, and I wasn't doing anything, and I was stagnant, right? Really, I was just in that, like, kind of like in that puddle. I wasn't really depressed, but I was like, man, I was what's the word? Angry. I was resentful, you know. So I was like, I got to do something. And one day I read, or someone told me, I can't remember exactly which one it was, but they said that most people out of high school are like somebody who gets thrown out of a boat and the boat leaves and there's nothing around them, nothing they can see. And instead of saying, I'll swim that way or I'll swim this way, they just stay there in the place they were thrown out of fear of, oh, well, the boat might come back or somebody might come save me and then I won't be here. And it's like, dude, if you stay there, you're for sure going to drown. You might get saved, but it's like you have to really take things into your own hands. The other way is you're waiting for somebody. This way, it's on you, you know? And it's like, when I realized that, I kind of had to take a step back and be like, look, where I'm at right now, it's not where I want to be. But if I stay here and just keep complaining about it, nothing changes.
Yeah,
You know?
the analogy I always use is movement creates change. You know, whether it's movement in the wrong direction to teach you a lesson, because I don't believe there are mistakes, there's only lessons, or it's movement that's in the correct direction.
Yeah.
Maybe it's diagonal and you start to, oh, wait, I got to do a little change of course and I'm going the right way. But if you don't move, you'll never know.
Yeah.
So that's a really good analogy. I like that.
I love the term fail fast, fail often.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because if you do it quick, you'll know whether you were doing it wrong.
Exactly,
You know,
yeah.
It's like, well, why fail long? You know, it's like if you find out if you can find out within a day if you're doing it right or wrong, that would be the best case scenario. You know, if you could find out in a minute, it would be even better because you just stop wasting time.
Yeah, the more failures you get, the more quickly you can recognize the failures in the future.
Yeah. Well, man, we're right up about where it's going to end. Do you have a final remark? Anybody you want to give a shout out to? Somebody you want to thank?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my parents. As tumultuous as my childhood was, the strength that I gained from the little pieces of wisdom that they would give me. My mom would always tell me it's not about what's happening to you, it's about what's happening in you. Has really kept me going through some of my darkest times. And my dad, of course, has always taught me about hard work and the necessity to lift a load.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank both my parents, my sisters. I love all you guys. And I appreciate everybody who's listening to my music, and I want to let you know that times can get better if you change your perspective and you work hard.
Yeah. Any final thoughts or remarks?
Well, I just want to say that if you're a musician or if you're an artist, you really have to focus on what your mission and your purpose is. You have to become competent in your craft. So if you're a singer, you've got to be the best singer that you know. I mean, literally the best singer that you know of in your circle of friends. First, you have to do that. Once I did that, then I had confidence. Okay, well, now I'm competing with the rest of the world. And once you're competing with the rest of the world, it's all about creating something unique. Remember, even a child can be technical and be very technically good on an instrument. It's not about technique. It's about emotion and originality. So focus on those two things, especially originality and being unique, and you'll succeed.
Yeah. Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on here, and I really can't wait to see what big things are coming from you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Tell you why this is the path I choose. I'm a lying tamer, so broken and abused. Can I tell you why this is the path I choose? I am a lying tamer, and I am not the same. You ask me what I've seen, I'll tell you a little everything. You ask me what I've seen, I'll tell you don't